Welcome to the Hey Docs podcast with your host, Jill Allen. In this episode, Ryan Williams from OrthoSelect is joining me on the show. Today's episode is all about AI and how products like DIBS AI are changing the game for indirect bonding and practices. From efficiency to challenges practices face, we are covering it all. So let's get started. Hey docs, when it comes to marketing, I keep hearing that you're frustrated and that you don't know what you're paying for or even if your marketing efforts are working. Are you wondering what your next marketing move should be? I would suggest you contact Mary Kay Miller and her team at Kaleidoscope. With their free digital marketing audit, you will get answers and solutions to your biggest marketing questions. Go to contactkl.com to request your free digital marketing audit today. When it comes to websites, SEO, and digital advertising, you don't know what you don't know till you know. Find out what you don't know today. That's contactkl.com. Thank you so much for being on Hey Docs with me. I'm super excited for this episode today.
Thank you, Jill. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
Yes. So I'd love to start us off by just having you tell us a little bit about yourself and about OrthoSelect and what you're doing in the industry right now.
Yeah, it's great. About 20 years ago, Steve Gardner found out he was going to have a baby and he needed to grow up and be serious in life and get a job. Previous, when he was little, when he first had braces, he had worked for his orthodontist and had done study models. And he said, I can do study models. So that was the genesis for OrthoSelect. He started in his unfinished basement. He hired his wife and they just frantically made study models all day. That eventually pivoted and he added more products. And one of those products was digital indirect bonding. And so about, I guess it's been 10 years ago, Steve started developing the original DIBS software. And that has since morphed into DIBS AI as we've incorporated new technology and better processes and protocols. And here we are today. We're arguably the largest provider of digital indirect bonding in the world, as far as we're aware. And it's been awesome. It's been an exciting ride.
Yeah, that's great. And I'm gonna take you down memory lane with me just a little bit here, because one of the things why I have been looking forward to doing this recording with you is just being able to talk about this technology. And when I got started in orthodontics, and it's been 32 years now that I've been in orthodontics, and you may or may not know this, but I actually started as a sterilization assistant and then was actually in the assisting role.
Yes.
And probably about 30 years ago, maybe 28 years ago, my doctor was a very progressive orthodontist. And I can actually remember when indirect bonding was just coming onto the scene. And just to take you back in memory lane, I can remember when it was done. For any of our young docs out there listening, you're going to not even believe that this is that we used to do this. But again, even doing the type of bonding that we do now was very different. We were still bending straight wire and tap welding bands way back when.
Sure.
But this doc that I worked with was actually, again, very progressive and bringing this into the market in his practice. And at the time, the material that we used was this really thick, hard, you could not see through it, white plastic almost material. And I can't remember now exactly how we got to that point, but it was very thick. And the way we would do it to try and do these indirect bondings is we would put it up onto the teeth and then we would use a scalpel, if you can believe this. And
Wow.
you could not see through the material, and you would use a scalpel to cut this material off, praying that you did not hit the gingiva.
That doesn't make me nervous at all.
And then you'd crack it off and maybe 4 of the 6 brackets in the quadrant stayed, and you'd be like, woohoo, this was great. So I bring that up just to say this kind of takes me down memory lane in the sense that I can remember when indirect bonding, when I can't even tell you that it was a company, I can't remember way back when, but it's so much fun for me to see how far our industry has come and what we are able to do now with the way we place brackets and the way we can work on efficiency in our practices now, as to the days of a very thick 1-inch material and a scalpel when we were doing indirect bonding. So
Compared
I
to the
just,
dark ages.
yeah,
Yeah.
literally the dark ages. You
Yeah.
cannot see what you're doing. So I just had to tell you that story because I think you can appreciate it with you guys doing what you're doing. And so that kind of leads me into not only have we just come so far with what we can do with technology, but I really want to talk a little bit about AI. And I think that is what you guys have really brought to our industry in the sense of we've got software now that can really help us dial in what we're doing and how we're doing it. So I'm wondering if you can talk just a little bit about how AI is really impacting the orthodontic industry and what it's doing within your company as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So AI is really exciting and it's pretty new to orthodontics. I can think of, there's probably three or four. I can think of four companies off the top of my head that actually are doing AI like today. There's a lot of buzz and a lot of talk about it. And there's all kinds of different AI, right? So there's four companies I can think of off the top of my head that are actually doing it. I think the secret to AI and why it'll be amazing for orthodontics is it actually answers specific problems, right? So, for example, in our industry right now, staffing is an issue, right? We have to figure out in our businesses how to do more with equal or less. And staffing is a big piece of that. We have pricing pressures, we have inflation. We need to, if we can do more with less, then we can actually maintain prices that attract more patients. So that's all very interesting to me. And I think AI is going to play a huge role in allowing us to be more efficient in orthodontics than we've ever been in the past.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the thing that my mind goes to a lot, and I think a lot of doctors is we think about AI maybe on the business side of our business. Oh, I'm going to use it to help write my ads
My chat
for,
GPT
yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
exactly. But what you're talking about is how AI is helping us on the clinical side of it and how it is maybe taking away our doctor intensive time that I'm working my way through this to now. And I'll let you expand on that a little bit, but I'm envisioning that I can teach this program what we're doing, or these pieces are already built into it. And now I as a doctor don't necessarily have to sit there and do it. I can have a team member do it, or I can have some of these pieces already in place for me. Can you expand on that just a little bit with DIBS and DIBS AI?
Yeah. I don't know if you remember who Ray Kroc was, is. I don't know if he's even still alive, but Ray Kroc was the guy that originally bought the original McDonald's, right? And what he did to fast food is he systemized it, right?
Yes.
So up until that point, you had a hamburger person and you had a fries person and you had a shake person, but they didn't know the other jobs very well. They couldn't fit in. So what he did is he systemized it. He made a system and he could plug in whoever he needed into the right spots. So orthodontics is obviously a little more difficult than fast food. But if we implement AI clinically and in our practices, we can systemize that. And that creates efficiencies. So if we can systemize it, then we don't have to have the extensive training for our assistants that maybe we needed in the past, right? They can do equivalent work without that time and expense. And that gives us more options in our hiring and allows us to build out our staff a little easier than in the past. So I think AI in phase one, which is probably where we are right now, AI in phase one is really all about systemizing and automating what previously was just mind-numbing, stupid, repetitive work,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
AI is really good at eliminating repetitive tasks. It's not very good yet at replacing a doctor
Yeah.
or building machines that kill all mankind and take over the world. That's not really in the cards either. But right now they can make our lives a lot easier and a lot more efficient.
Yeah, yeah. So we talked a little bit about my intro into indirect bonding and many years ago. I'm wondering if you can talk about how the evolution in where indirect bonding methods of the past to the present and where you see it going future, especially with DIBS, how that is all, how you see past to present to future, what that's going to look like and is looking like.
Yeah. So let's start. We'll work our way forward. So in the past, traditional indirect bonding, you take that algin impression that gags people, and then you pour up the model and the stone, and you do the X's and you crosses on the teeth, and you place the brackets, and you use sugar babies or your nasty tray that you were describing earlier, right? You create that using the old suck down method,
Yep.
right? And then you cut that out manually. In your case, you did it while they're on the teeth, which sounds freaky scary, or you just did it prep, and then you bond the patient, and then you have debonds and et cetera. So that's old school.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can remember back in those days, how much work that took, right?
Oh, gosh. Yeah.
You had to hire people, and people would have a permanent residence at the practice because they happened to know how to do all of that
Mm-hmm.
and to do
Mm-hmm.
it well.
Yep.
And then once that person left, you're, as a doctor, that was a good run while we had it, but now I don't have a replacement person that can learn all that. And so you reverted back to direct bonding.
Yep.
So fast forward to aligners, right? So now we're introducing a digital workflow. And to me, that is what was extremely attractive to aligners from an orthodontist point of view. From the consumer point of view, the idea of having invisible braces, I totally get. But from an orthodontist perspective, now everything's more digital, and that equated to chair time efficiency. So it made sense, right? That was a smart idea. And I feel like the pendulum really swung that way towards aligners because of that digital workflow. But now we've got that with buccal appliances, right? And lingual too. But now that we see that pendulum swinging the other way, and now the entire manufacturing process, the entire case setup process is all been highly automated.
Mm-hmm.
And so we don't have to do all that. So all that old work that would take a long time and a lot of effort and very skilled effort, that's no longer the case. Like today, we can get a case set up in a digital case setup. We spit a case setup back to the doctors in 24 hours or less.
Wow.
We can print and manufacture, package, and have in the delivery truck the trays for that patient in 24 hours or less. So AI is really that. When I say automation and simplification, that is the name of the game here, because now because we're fast, you can also imagine we're a lot less expensive than in the past as well. In fact, when we first got into digital indirect bonding, we charged, I think it was $180 or $185 a case. And it took 2 weeks or 3 weeks to get to you. Now we are actually less expensive. So here we are about 3 years later or 4 years later from that price. We're at $165 and we are 5 to 6 days turnaround. So that's amazing in today's day and age, where you go to your favorite restaurant and suddenly you're paying $25 a plate when you used to pay 20, right? Or whatever. Right. And prices are increasing. We're the only ones I'm aware of that have actually decreased their price. So that's cool, I think.
Absolutely. And one of the things that makes me think about especially when I'm working with my startup docs, and most of our audience are younger doctors that are getting going with their practices. One of the conversations that we continually have is just thinking about how can we be as efficient as possible in our practices. And I always tell my startup docs, there's never a better time to work on your systems than in the first year of practice, and to really hone in efficiencies from how we're going to the type of brackets that we're going to use, to the systems and how we're going to deliver. If it's a fixed appliance, how are we going to, are you going to sit down and manually do it, or are you going to do it in some type of an indirect bond way, to the aligner system, all of that. And I think that also thinking about the technology component, there is never a better time, in my opinion, to learn the technology than when you're also a tad bit slower, and you can really, I don't know, just work through what's going to work for you, what's not going to work for you as you're thinking about that in your first year. I'm wondering if you can just talk to us a little bit about what you guys are seeing on the impact from an ortho office, whether it's a startup or even an existing practice that's saying, you know what, for me, I work a lot with doctors where we're working on doctor time scheduling when we're looking at their schedules and we're saying, okay, it really is not just about shared chair time with aligners, but can we be even more efficient with our shared doctor time? Like how we've only got one doc and we've got a lot of places that doc has got to be. So I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what you guys are seeing from a feedback standpoint with your doctors from that implementing technology like this that allows them to have very limited time at the chair, be more efficient with their doctor time throughout the day, and what type of an impact that's having on their practices.
Yeah, I'm happy to. So you started out your comments talking about a new doctor coming online,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's touch on that and then we'll talk about efficiency. Because I get it. When you start a practice, you got all the time in the world, right? And so I talk to doctors all the time and they're like, you know what? I have a lot of time. And so I'll just direct bond and do it the old way. And I think that's interesting because I think as a medical profession, we really should have the needs of the patient first and foremost.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm unaware, I've never met, you guys could correct me if I'm wrong, but I've never met a teenager who's pretty excited about being in braces for 2 years, right? If they could be 14, 16 months, I think they'd be all about that. And as you're starting a new practice, I don't think you want to come across as old school.
Mm-hmm.
I think nowadays you want to attract patients that are interested in the new way, in modern orthodontics, right? Digital
Yep.
orthodontics. For heaven's sakes, that's why they come for Invisalign.
Mm-hmm.
They want the modern stuff. They don't want old school.
Mm-hmm.
And so for a new doctor, I think, Jill, you make an excellent point about setting up your processes earlier so that when you do bring people on, you've got those nailed a little
Yep.
bit and
Yep.
they're easier to implement because that's just how you do things. So there's a lot to be said for that. And I come from more of a marketing and sales perspective. So I put on my marketing hat and I go, I would rather communicate to the community that I'm a modern orthodontist. Even though I have extra time, then again, I don't really want to create a perception that I have extra time and I don't have enough patience either. So, anyways, if I was starting out, I would focus on what that message looks like to my community because I'm going to attract more clients faster if I'm a modern orthodontist.
Yeah.
Now, as you go, yeah, suddenly it becomes hard because you've got more clients, you've got people waiting, hopefully, to get bonded and to start with you. And so suddenly efficiency becomes a necessity in your workflow. And what we are seeing with our doctors and the data we get back is from a workflow standpoint, your bonding appointment, instead of being an hour and a half for direct bonding for upper, lower, full, all teeth, hour and a half, we can get that to 45 minutes,
Mm-hmm.
right? So what does that mean? If you're talking about efficiency, that means you just doubled your capacity or close to it
Yep.
to bring on new patients.
Yep.
And that's one element of efficiency. And sometimes doctors are stuck on that.
Mm-hmm.
They just want a more streamlined workflow, which is valuable. But there's a whole other side too, right? You can be efficient in treatment time because if you reduce the treatment time by 6 months, your capacity as a company to handle more active patients at any one moment in time has increased as well.
Yeah.
And so those appointments and the busyness of your clinic or your practice, it's manageable.
Yeah.
So there's two elements to that efficiency that we have found we impact that bonding time efficiency as well as the treatment time
Yeah.
efficiency.
Yeah.
Is that answering your question, Jill?
It is. And it leads me to a question as you were saying that. I always say to docs, a busy schedule is just a busy schedule unless you've got time for new patient exams and starts. because that really is where we produce. And so many times, especially if you've come from the dental side, a lot of my docs have been dentists first before they got into the dental. And when we look at a dental schedule, we can count up our day and go, oh, I just produced X amount of dollars by all of these appointments. Or ortho, it's almost the exact opposite. If I have a whole lot of adjustment appointments and big long bonding appointments, and unless it's a start appointment or unless it's a new patient, you're just busy and you're probably running your practice not very efficiently. So I love that you touched on something that I think is really important that docs pay attention to. Is it's not just about shortening that bonding time to have more times for your adjustments. It's shortening that bonding time to have more times to get your new patients in, or to have more times to do bondings and have the doctor have more time to scoot around to be in those appointments.
That's right. So you can actually kick that to the next level, because it's one thing to have a shorter bonding time, but it's another thing to not have the doctor involved at all in the bonding. Right? Because then the doctor can be in the consult room. You can be bringing in the business, that you actually making the money and doing things that only the doctor can do. Because once a doctor has done a digital approval of these cases, that role has been fulfilled. Now you just let your staff go. The cool ancillary benefit, right? The bonus to delegating to your staff is they feel empowered. Right? Because now they're not sitting there awkwardly trying to deal with a parent and a kid who's all NOLA'd up and waiting for the doctor who's late because the doctor's tied up elsewhere. And so now they're empowered and they're like, I don't need to wait for the doctor. I can just go ahead and do this case and move on, and everybody's happy. And the only thing the parent says to me is, that's it? We're done? And yeah, you're done. Let's go.
Yeah.
So I think that's missed a lot. And in a world where it's hard to staff, and it's sometimes hard to keep staff on board, it's empowering for your staff to be able to finish a bonding and just do their jobs and not have to be stuck waiting for you. So I think that's an unnoticed bonus sometimes.
I completely agree with you on that. And I think, which is why so many times dental assistants who get into ortho are like, where have you been my whole life? Like, this is so great.
Is awesome.
Like, I can't believe how much I get to do. There was another part that you talked about that I think is worth just circling back around to. And I'm going to have you unpack this just a little bit more, but I think it also has to do with just efficiency of treatment and doing indirect bonding. And I know from way back when I was in that clinical role, and it's been a while from then till now, but and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about this, just what it does in being able to have good bracket placement right from the beginning. Because I think that was one of the beauties that I loved about, on top of all the other things. And we were definitely phase one early school doing this, but what I noticed from being a clinical assistant was it did decrease us having to do so many repositioning. And I think it's interesting now that in our industry, we don't even build out appointment codes for repositioning anymore, or wire bending and all of those different things. And I think a lot of it just has to do with the technology, but I can't help but think that DIBS AI plays a big part in this as well.
You've hit the core of the issue, right? Nailed it, Jill.
So nice. All right. I get a gold star today.
So really, ultimately, DIBS AI exists for accurate bracket placement. That's the name of the game. And because we know that if we can place the bracket right in the first time, beautiful, wonderful things happen. That's how we shorten treatment time, because you have less repos and you have less wire bending. Even with stock brackets, you reduce all of that work and you have more efficient tooth movement. It's all based on the bracket placement. Now, I will admit that I am terribly biased towards bracket placements, but I do believe that if you're looking for a straight wire solution, accurate bracket placement is like 80% of the battle, right? It's the vast majority. And if you can nail that, if you can do that correctly, you're doing wonderfully well. Now, there's levels to bracket placement. Now, hearkening back to your comments earlier, Jill, about old school, right? You did the crosshairs on the bracket and you stuck it on there. If you remember, your doctor's pivoting and looking at that model. It's a pre-existing model. It's the existing teeth.
Yep.
And what's difficult back in the day was taking the model and looking at the occlusion, right? And making judgment calls on bracket placement based on that. So it became formulaic a little bit. Your heights would be just so, and you just do that. And that had wonderful effects. I think universally, most doctors would say IDB, old school or digital, better treatment outcomes, better patient experience. Nobody's ever argued those points.
Yep.
It just never made business sense. But the results were really good. But here's the deal. At that time, you're only looking at the pre-existing, right? Now bring ourselves forward into the modern digital age.
Mm-hmm.
Now we can start with the end in mind, like Invisalign taught us years ago, right? You can position the teeth to where you want them to be. And then based on that, we can reverse engineer where the bracket should be.
Yeah.
So that's a different game altogether, because now you can look at a heat map of the bite, right? And you can go, oh, I've got heavy contacts on my 6s and 2s or whatever.
Yep.
And so now as a doctor, before I've even placed a bracket, I can make a choice. I can enamelplasty, or I can intrude, I can tip, torque, I can do whatever I want there. And in real time, the bracket placement adjusts. It's powerful because now a doctor can actually see this stuff before he or she places brackets and waits for it to work its way out.
Yes.
So that is a powerful thing. And that I think really, if you're trying to pinpoint a single factor that affects treatment time, overall treatment time, I think it's that. I think it's that ability to visualize stuff, rotations and torques and contacts. If you can visualize that stuff at the beginning, how cool is that you can make those changes and then just let the wires and the brackets do their job?
Yeah. And I cannot agree with you more. And I definitely think Invisalign really helped us see that visual, being able to truly look at everything in a 3D perspective and turn and see, oh, this is the impact that I'm going to have. And what I can see from, again, old school to where we're at now to where we're going. How incredible is that? And going all the way back to your marketing comment, how cool is it to be able to tell a patient, we're treating you in this virtual realm where even what we can see in the chair looking at you upside down, we don't have to pull out, not that they know this, articulating paper to see where you're hitting hard or have you do all these things that we used to do in the past. Now you can see all of that with that AI technology. Just so cool to see where we're going.
Yeah, kudos to Invisalign, really. That was part of the digital age they brought to orthodontics. You really think about it, ortho hadn't changed much. Yeah, we had some different wire technology that had come in, but man, it had been basically ortho as ortho until they did that. And I feel like we're now in that next phase of that digital age. It's pretty cool. Invisalign has a really good modeling of what the future teeth will look like in their positioning. And as far as we're aware, we have the most accurate prediction as well. That simulation that's in there, it's not perfect, right? But what we're doing is really cool because we do know the morphology of the teeth. We know the bracket. We know every dimension and dynamic of the bracket. We know the finishing wire. And so we're calculating the slop in the slot. And so we're getting an accurate prediction of the torque based on the prescription of your brackets. And it could be any prescription of bracket. We accept all brackets, right? So this is the first that we're aware of that anybody is taking whatever bracket the doctor and we're calculating the slop to get an accurate prediction of that torque. Yeah. And so that just makes that prediction even more useful and more accurate. And there's more to do. Yeah. And that's what's cool about AI in the future is the level of accuracy and precision is just going to get better from here.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that you're saying that because I do believe, talking to lots of doctors, working with lots of doctors over the last 18 years and with me doing consulting, and everybody does have their own preference. We all want our choice, and whatever that is and however that's going to work out. And I can only imagine, again, how AI is really helping with that process in As we all know, that's what makes a bracket different from another bracket, is there from torque to slot size to all the different things. And to think that now we've got this technology that you could have two doctors working with two different brackets, still getting great results at the end, but it has to do with that interface that's paying attention to that the whole way through, versus just saying you can only use this technology if you only use this type of bracket or whatnot.
That's right. That's right. That actually, at a high level, you go, that's not very complicated. But it has been
Oh
the
gosh,
proverbial rabbit hole
I'm
for us
sure.
to be able to accommodate whatever bracket is thrown at us. Self-ligating, twin, and then all the variations within
Yes.
each of those categories, right? It's been a bear. And that's part of what makes us unique, is our ability to do that.
Yeah. I'm curious to know, are any doctors using the simulator in any type of a way that you have it? And I apologize that I don't know the answer to this. Are they using it at all in a way in the new patient exam, or at all to show a patient, kind of we do with aligners, to show a patient the way their teeth will look at the end of treatment? Or is that more just a diagnostic component that the doctors are able to use when they're working up their treatment? Hey docs, let's talk about Smile Suite, because it's not just another scheduling system. It's a game changer in the world of new patient management. And as a proud Smile Suite partner, I've witnessed the incredible impact it has on practices of all sizes. Smile Suite means your new patient calls and web leads are expertly handled 7 days a week, even during nights and weekends. And they offer top-notch customizable presentation software and seamless post-consultation follow-up. It's like having a secret weapon for your practice's success. Curious? Dive into the revolution at GetSmileSuite.com. And don't forget to mention Hey Docs to unlock some extra goodies. Elevate your practice with Smile Suite, because every smile deserves a suite of excellence.
Yeah, I'm unaware that anybody's using it in the consult. It is a diagnostic tool at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason it is because it does require, because in the diagnostic, we actually put your bracket prescription on it, and then we return it with the brackets already on there. So we're taking some extra steps there. Invisalign has a head start on that. I guess they have 20 years, don't they? 20 years head start
Yeah,
to
just
be
a
able to
little
do
bit.
that.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. But yeah, we'll get there, because our goal is for you to be able to submit a scan and in under a minute have it back, right? In a class 1 bite, looking nice, and with doctor preferences in there. So if you prefer a smile arc, for example, it will be able to, that's our goal. That's our big hairy goal, as they say in business school.
Yeah.
And that's what we're shooting for. We're not there yet, but time and money in software, it's all about time and money. We'll get there.
That's for sure. So let's talk a little bit about some of the common challenges doctors having when they are looking at implementing a system like yours. I know probably, and maybe you can talk about two different examples: a startup younger doc who's thinking about doing this right from the beginning, to maybe a challenge that an existing practice, they're clicking along, they've been doing it traditional way for a while. Maybe let's talk about those two challenges.
Yeah. For a new doctor, the challenges are significantly less. That's the easy one. So we'll tackle the easy one first and then do the harder one. But yeah, it does require training. So DIBS AI is like an example of, if you're a pilot and you have 3,000 hour flying hours, right? You've been around. You've been in the Navy and you've flown, or the Air Force, and you've flown your entire career. You still have to go to training to fly the Boeing 747, right? Or a different airplane. There's training for each airplane that you go through. And that's true of DIBS AI. So with a new doctor, you're getting trained on your first airplane, basically. And we need to teach you how to do that. DIBS AI has different protocols than other systems, which makes complete sense if you think about it. There's only, in the past, maybe 10, 20% of doctors did I2B. You got to that begs the question, why didn't they? Because it was a pain and it didn't work very well. So we had to change those protocols and change those processes in order for this to make sense. And yeah, we need to train you on how to do it. And so when we onboard, we do that. We own it. and we train doctors and their staff so that they can be successful. We don't benefit, and the doctor and certainly the patient doesn't benefit if you don't do it correctly. Which brings me to the more experienced office and practice. And I hear it all the time. We've done IDB for 25 years. I know how to do this. Why do we need training? And the pilot example is still valid.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
If you're going to fly the new airplane, you got to know how to do it. And again, we have changed protocols. And I realize that there's a lot of training in ortho, but one of our challenges with an experienced office is the tendency for staff and doctors to revert back to some previous other unknown, unnamed system and protocols, and then try and use that in DIBS AI. It's like that analogy of old wine or new wine in old bottles or old, yeah.
Yep.
I'm saying that totally wrong. New wine in old barrels. That's the word I was looking for. It doesn't work.
Right.
And that's true of DIBS AI. There are key differences in our protocols that if you don't train and you don't practice them, you tend to revert back to what may be practiced 15, 20 years ago and think that's going to work, and it doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious if you can talk just a little bit about the impact on moving towards an indirect system and what that does for starts in an office. Because I think that there's got to be a doctor out there that's saying, from a startup to an existing, but Jill, I like my same day starts. And if I move to an indirect system, I'm just going to lose all these patients. Sure. But Jill, I got nothing but time. So why wouldn't I just do a direct bonding when I'm getting started? So can you talk to that? Because I think that's a challenge too, that doctors and treatment coordinators maybe have to overcome. There's a little mental hurdle there.
They do. We're talking about digital orthodontics. So if you want to do old school, then a same day start is typically been you place brackets. Mm-hmm. But in digital orthodontics, in modern orthodontics, that's no longer the case. Are you doing a same day start with Invisalign?
Exactly. Thank you.
No, you're not. You're not, right? So it is all about how the doctor is defining what a same day start looks like. The patient doesn't know. So the doctor is defining it. The TC is defining it. So all you have to do is say, today, your treatment begins with an intraoral scan. Yes. Sign here, right?
Yes.
And that's the same day start. And then have them come back with our turnaround time. You start them on a Tuesday, you bond them the following Tuesday, right? Yep. You can do it the next week.
Yeah.
I think we are doing ourselves a disservice as an industry by not just defining what a same day start is the right way.
Yeah. We call those same day scans a lot of times, where that is our start. And
that's the start.
I completely agree with you. And I just wanted to hear you say that, because it is exactly that. We've got to change our mindset. And I think it's so much easier for my younger doctors to hear that, because they've been exposed to this and we understand that maybe a little bit more. But a lot of times for my existing doctors and my existing treatment coordinators, that can be a hard shift to think about. And I would say, especially with our existing practices, we may have to think a little bit more about, okay, how do we then get our placement starts into our schedules? And do we need to rethink about the way our schedule templates look and different things like that? Nothing that we can't overcome, nothing that we can't deal with. But I think along with just changing up the way we're doing our systems, the mental shift, it's also then thinking about, okay, this is our money-making appointment right here. Like the scan was the start, but we still have to be able to get them in to get it on. And now it's just a bonding appointment that we're fitting into our schedule.
Yeah. I actually don't. I'll confess, Jill, that I don't really know what the problem is with the same day start, because all you have to do is copy what you're doing with Invisalign.
Yeah.
But as a TC, I would already know how to do that, because that's an Invisalign patient equivalent, right? So that I think we define that for some reason, somewhere along the road, we define to our customers that a same day start is we place a bracket, and that's not how it has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm curious I think you touched on this already. When we look at just from a startup practice in general, starting with DIBS AI, I can't think of a reason why it wouldn't be a good start in a practice, but I'm wondering if there's anything specific that if a doctor's building out a practice, that they should be thinking about from a technology standpoint. If they were saying, yeah, I don't know why I wouldn't start. If I'm gonna do fixed appliances along with my offering of aligners and along with this, that, or the other, is there anything specific that they need to be thinking about in design of practice or from a lab standpoint, or anything that you can think of that we haven't talked about or thought about?
Typically, there isn't, to be honest. As far as a facility
Mm-hmm.
or any of that, it doesn't require any additional equipment like that. Now, you can add equipment. So, for example, you could do a CBCT scanner,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we incorporate CBCT scans into our diagnosis, right? So you can
Oh.
see that, and that's really cool. However, those are extremely expensive, and normally, as a startup doctor, you may not do that
Mm-hmm.
unless you have some other reasons, obviously. But that's the only thing I could think of, is if you wanted to incorporate that type of technology at the front end of your practice. That's a build out kind of issue. Otherwise, DIBS AI is not an overhead item, right? Overhead, which this is an interesting topic because most doctors have never been to business school.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often talk to doctors about, and they use the term overhead. And what they mean to say is expenses,
Yep.
because overhead is not
Yep.
only an expense, right? Overhead is a very specific expense. And so that's an interesting thing. So oftentimes doctors go, I don't want to increase my overhead. And what they mean to say is they don't want to spend any money. They just want to be cheap.
Yep.
What overhead is like rent and wages, things that regardless of how many cases you do, you're going to have to pay that same amount
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
overhead. So the name of the game in orthodontics is to do as many patients as you can and still pay the same overhead. So DIBS AI is not an overhead thing. It is linked to your treatment of the patient. So the more patients you do, the more profitable you become because your overhead doesn't change.
Yeah. And so what I'm hearing, which is different than maybe we'll say first gen IDB, is it does not mean that a doctor is going to have to invest in their dry lab now, where they have to have a
Yeah.
printer now, and they have
No.
to have all this plastic on hand, and they
Yeah.
have to pay an extra person to stand in there and stand at the computer and do all of these different
Yeah.
things.
You don't need to. And you reminded me, Jill, there are some doctors that are really excited about doing 3D printing
Mhm.
and they want to build out a lab, and you can totally do that too. But again, with our system, you don't have to, but you can. But if I were looking at that, I would look at it from a business point of view. As an orthodontist, I would make all my money being an orthodontist. That the lab is a support, but I would take a critical eye to that, given the investment and the overhead, right?
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
extra space, that's extra people that you need to train how to do stuff
Yeah.
in there. It's the labs are like an entirely other business, right?
Mhm.
If you're going to do it well, you have to learn that second business. The difference in price, if I was talking to a doctor the other day and she was under the impression she'd save a bunch of money if she printed her own, but the difference is the material, a little bit of labor, and the shipping.
Yeah.
That's what you save. So it's $35
Yeah.
is what you save by printing an office. So economically, does it make sense? It's iffy. You could go either way, and you could argue it both ways. But if you're really into 3D printing, then that's true. You would have to have a build out of that. In our business, we found that most doctors prefer the simplicity of ordering it through our labs or through our partner labs.
Mhm.
And with our turnaround time so fast, you wonder, do I need to print an office and do I want that headache? And so today, as we sit here, right around 80% of our clients print through a third party lab.
Yeah, and if you think about it, you're going to have turnaround time regardless. Like you said, maybe there's a small percentage that you may save. It always comes to scalability. The bigger you get, the harder it is to scale and the more
Yeah.
expensive it gets. So, would you mind just walking us through? So, let's say a doc wants to get started Are they, and this kind of goes back to, do we have to have extra things on hand? Do they have to buy extra brackets that they send to you guys and you guys are holding them and now they're having to manage how many brackets do they have, or that component of it? Because I think these are the questions that I get a lot. What does this mean? Because going back to first gen and some of the things that used to go on to where you guys are at now. Can you talk to that a little bit as well?
Yeah, absolutely. We do offer for free. We will insert your brackets for you in your trays and send them to you preloaded. That's a free service we do. And yeah, it's something like, it's a very high percentage. It's maybe in the 75-80% range of doctors take advantage of that. And I would too. That's a no-brainer in my mind. But how that works is you literally just authorize your bracket rep and say, hey, I'm buying 50 cases. Will you divert 20 of those or 30 of those to OrthoSelect? And they'll just ship them to us directly. That's the easiest way. That way you're not having to repackage anything and all that stuff. You just skip all that. And the most bracket reps know who we are and they know what to send us. And they send us exactly what we need. Has your name on it, has the brackets, and it has the part numbers. And that's exactly what we need. So we get that right. The inventory we manage, it is yours, right? It's the doctor's brackets. We have it we keep it in our lab. We're based in Utah, so it's here in Utah. And we track that inventory, and in our system, you can, the same place you log in to submit a case, we can show you what your inventory is there. So it's all right there on the screen. And we set reorder points. So if you dip below 20 cases or 10 cases that we have on hand, an email notification goes to whoever on your staff or the doctor or even the bracket rep or everybody to let you know, hey, we're getting low on your lower sixes or whatever, your alternate molar tubes or whatever. And we can communicate that. So that's how we manage all of that.
I love that. You're probably less likely to run out of brackets that way than we are the old school way of doing it, when all of a sudden you're like, what do you mean we don't have any cuspid brackets?
Yes. Yeah, we try because we get in trouble if the doctor runs out of brackets. That's how life works.
Yeah.
And so we've learned a school of hard knocks. It's best to communicate. We even, if you get really low or we have none left and you haven't replenished your stock, then in the case we send little notes and in the case and say, hey, you're probably wondering why you don't have all your brackets in here. Well, it's because we don't have any more brackets.
Yeah, here's the love note. So if you were to guess where AI is going and is going to take our industry in the next 5 to 10 years, where do you think we're going?
I think we are obviously at the very beginning of this. And I think AI is going to get smarter as we go. And specifically to orthodontics, it's going to solve very specific problems for us. Right? We are under immense pressure as business people to do more with less. And AI is going to allow us to do more with less. That's why we use ChatGPT, right? We want to communicate more faster with less effort, right? So that's really the problem it's solving. We can do that with orthodontics. So we really envision that DIBS AI specifically, using that AI technology, will be able to automate and simplify even further, so that your doctor submits a case, and by the time they walk back to their desk, it's ready for their approval. And we believe that the AI will be able to start personalizing that setup for the doctor. Like right now, that's really hard to do at scale. If I had one client, I could personalize the heck out of that client, right? But we don't. We have thousands. And so with thousands of clients, that's very hard to scale. But our software development, our investment in software development in AI right now is all targeted to moving us in that direction, so that we know based on the profile of that doctor that, hey, they like to cheat their lower threes more mesial, right? To get the rotation and things like personalized preferences like that. We believe the AI will take us in that direction. And so that'd be cool. That'll help. So there's that sort of stuff, but there's also the AI could be smarter in diagnosis, and they can learn, hey, this is a proper diagnosis, and they can help the doctor visualize and be warned of issues there. So all of that means the doctor spends less digital time, has better treatment outcomes, better patient experience, all of that stuff. I think the AI is just going to make us smarter and more efficient at all of those.
Yeah, that's great. I look forward to the future. It's fun to see where it's at now, and I can't wait to see where we're going.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's important that we understand that AI is probably never going to replace a doctor. I can't envision that. It becomes a much better tool for the doctor. Like right now, DIBS AI as is, we consider it to be like a nail gun, right? You've got a hammer and you can do a lot with a hammer, and or you can use a nail gun.
mhm.
And wow, but are you going to use a nail gun the same way you use a hammer? No, you're not. And we'll move beyond the nail gun stage, and it'll be something else that's even cooler and even faster and more efficient. And yeah, that's where AI is definitely taking us.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. As we wrap up, this has been wonderful. And I know I had a lot of docs that are like, okay, I like this. I think I can do this. And it totally makes sense to start up this way right from the beginning. It's all about efficiencies, docs. It's get those efficiencies in place in the beginning so that you don't have to futz with it mid practice. But if somebody wants to get a hold of you, maybe wants to learn a little bit more about OrthoSelect or DIBS AI, what's going to be the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, actually, most of your bracket reps are very aware of who we are and work with us. So that's an easy one too. But just our website, dibsai.com, come to that website. You can book an appointment there with myself or one of our other awesome staff here. You can send me an email to ryanwilliams@myorthoselect.com. You can actually see a video demo on our website as well,
Cool.
which I'll apologize in advance has me on the demo video. So just realize that going in, you'll come out okay, I think. And yeah, we try and make that easy to do. But yeah, those are awesome ways to reach out to us.
Perfect. All righty. The way I like to finish up Hey Docs is with the speed round. So, Ryan, are you ready for the speed round
Yeah.
challenge?
Yeah, I've seen the speed round. I'm pretty nervous about this
Oh
actually.
no, oh no, it's going to be easy. It's going to be easy. All right. What's your go to productivity tool?
My iPhone and other smart people.
Ooh, I like that one. Early bird or night owl?
I think I'm most productive as an early bird, but I really hate waking up that early. So that's a dilemma.
I'm the same way. I don't like getting up, but I do a lot of really good things in the morning once I do get up.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of those things in life that you hate it when you first have it, but then you appreciate it a few minutes into it. You're like, okay, that was a good move.
Yep, yep. What was your first job?
The first job that I actually got a formal paycheck from was working for my dad in an back inventory room for a telephone company
Oh,
back in the day before we all got cell phones.
yeah.
I had to memorize all the parts.
Oh, wow. Wow, I can only imagine what that was like. All
Yeah.
right, what would you say has had the most impact on your professional life?
The most impact on my professional life, I would say my family, because in all honesty, right, the reason I do what I do is for their support and happiness.
Hmm.
And that is a big motivation.
Yeah.
And then the other side too is I couldn't do what I do without my wife, for example, taking care of the home and other things that I'm not there to do. I
Hmm.
travel quite a bit and I volunteer a lot in my community and my faith. And so I couldn't do all that without her taking equal or probably more of the burden.
Oh, that's wonderful. And then to finish us up, what's one business skill you think everyone should have?
Yeah. So can I do two?
Yeah, two is
So,
great.
somebody once said 90% of the battle is showing up, right?
Mm.
And I've learned that in life that showing up's a big deal. But in orthodontics, we're really good at showing up, right? Orthodontics live and die by their schedule. And it's actually one of the things I love about orthodontics is orthodontists are always on time, and it's super impressive. So maybe that's not relevant to orthodontists. So I would say communication.
Mm.
Somebody was saying the other day, I was in this interesting conversation where somebody was saying a successful orthodontist are the ones that people get along with and they talk to them, right? And it's harder for an orthodontist who can't communicate, can't be friendly with the clients. They're maybe a little stiffer, or whatever, can't engage with their patients. It's harder for them in this business. And so I think that's interesting. I've been thinking about that. And I believe there's probably some truth in there. So
Mhm.
yeah, communication.
Yeah, that's great. This has been absolute joy having you on the show. You gave me some great information. It was fun to take a walk down memory lane with you to talk about first gen to where we're at now. So thanks so much for being on Hey Docs and for just giving us some really good information about where our industry is going.
Thank you, Jill. This has been amazing, and I appreciate the invitation to hop on here with you. And I got to say that orthodontics is the coolest, right?
It is.
My background, I come from technology and sales, so I've only been in orthodontics for about 4 years, and I love it because the industry is very professional. The people are amazing. They show up on time, right? And they're smart. They're wicked smart, and it's a quality of person in orthodontics that I really enjoy. So it's great to be here. And again, I appreciate the invitation, Jill.
Yeah,
It's great to be with you.
absolutely. Well, until next time, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye.